Hi everyone, my name is Anna Bobotko or Nijhuis. I recently changed my last name, so I'm still getting used to it and so my network. And today I'll be talking to you about how location technology can help create a sustainable supply chain. And for those of you who are related to logistics and supply chain and anyhow, you are familiar with this graph, and we see a lot of funding happening in startups related to logistics and supply chain. In the last years, we've seen a tremendous growth, and me as being a logistics and mobility enthusiast, is actually very exciting to see this. And actually, we spend a lot of time talking about sustainability, how it's important, and how we need to act now before it's too late. And a lot of times in this context, we actually talk about urban logistics or last mile logistics, because it represents 20% of city congestion. Now, it will be a mistake not to start thinking critically about how the goods are getting from point A, which means the very first as well as the mid-mile, to point B. And I want to give you 5 reasons why. Thanks to COVID-19, as much as already touched upon a little bit on this, we see increased use of digital tools, and it blurs the lines between work, lifestyle, and social incentives. Yoga by Zoom or digital signatures is no longer taboo. And McKinsey actually have done a study where they observed that COVID has accelerated the scope and the reach of shift to digital. And the digital adoption is no longer something that's related to age. It plays in a lot of areas, and it has effect not only on consumer, but also on consumer expectations. And ability to track and see things is one of them. And in 2019, for a customer to be blind and not knowing where their parcel or their food is was something okay. In 2021, as a customer, if you don't see that or you don't have the transparency, then you actually have trust issues with the company. And I have to give a lot of credit to ride-hailing and food deliveries companies in that regard. We've done a tremendous job in exceeding consumer expectations. And I think we see also a shift happening in B2B industries that even more and more companies start to integrate map and tracking into their applications and platforms. And as I said, it's not isolated by consumers, but in B2B context. And here I want to show you 2 examples by Picnic and Shipio. For me, they're real game changers. And if I look at Picnic, for example, exactly 5 years ago, they decided to be bold and challenge the traditional grocery stores with creating a pure digital supermarket. We focused on creating more agile and sustainable supply chain with a bespoke design of the EV milk van, as well as procuring directly from the farmers based on the demand that they get in the applications, and organizing themselves in such a way that they keep the products fresh. And if I look at companies like Shipio, we are taking it to a next level in between the mid and first miles, where they actually are trying to eradicate emails and phone calls between parties that are involved in those processes and try to replace it with more sophisticated tools that help manage the expectations between the 2 miles, basically. And now, as Martin also already mentioned as well, we are facing also with a driver shortage. With digitalization on its acceleration path and an effect of the pandemic, people are more concerned about their safety and health, as well as what they do with their lives. So it's not a secret to anyone that being a commercial driver is actually very demanding job. And therefore, many logistics companies today face a shortage of drivers. Finding a skillful driver is challenging by its own, but to really find people, and we see by the survey done by EU recently, that there are many reasons why it's really becoming a big problem. And one of the things that we mentioned here is the poor image of this profession, because it's a very lonely job. You can't really build proper relationships if you're on a way all the time and you have long hours. So basically, youngsters don't want to do it anymore. Now, luckily, we also have new technologies on the rise, and companies like Starship and Tesla are coming up with really cool technologies like robotics as well as autonomous car driving, and they're just around the corner. And they're real. These companies like these are actually big promise as well as big dream of transportation and logistics companies, because they promise to eradicate the biggest headache of all those companies, and that's personnel management. Now, although tech will be an enabler, let's not forget that we're still far away from this being a reality, and we can't really eradicate human completely from this chain. And we have a lot of challenges happening in the real world, one of which is traffic. So you would think that pandemic helped us somehow to conquer the congestion problem, but it's fair to say that there's still less congestion, but it's still here. On this slide, what you see is the details of what we call a TomTom and traffic index. It provides detailed insights on traffic congestion in over 400 cities around the world for the past 10 years. It's no surprise that 2020 ranking is unlike anything that we have seen before, but we also see now that the traffic is unfortunately returning back. We publish traffic index every year, so if you're curious, you can access it by this QR code and check out maybe your city is there too and where exactly it is. Now, with also happening with congestion and with many things happening, we also see that actually as a transportation, we have a big role to play because we still have global warming problem on our horizon. Population is growing, demand on consumers and also concerns of health and of COVID is still being present. And if we're really serious about commitments by getting to the net emissions by 2050 or 2040, as Andrea mentioned, then in transportation and logistics, we need to provide cleaner alternative of getting goods, people, and other things where they need to go, and we gotta do it quickly. There are many strategies happening, as we also seen already by Maciek and Andrea, but vehicle electrification is core strategies for many companies. And a lot of packages today are already delivered by electric vans as well as cargo bikes. And I'm very excited to see this. But this is, again, last mile scenarios. So what really happens in mid and first mile? We're looking at another fancy graph from McKinsey. The mid-mile is not going fast enough. And if you look at these predictions, as well as what's happening in the industry, like on the road, we don't see big shifts happening yet. And this is not just a demand issue, it's also a supply issue. If one single company today decides to switch every piece of their fleet to EV, it just won't be possible. We don't have the infrastructure, we don't have the batteries, we don't have even the manufacturing facilities. Speaking of infrastructure, that changes too. It's not rapid as we want it to be, but there are more and more initiatives popping up like mushrooms to make cities smarter, and the sense of connectivity is stronger. With infrastructure, we can expect changes on many fronts, like change of people's behavior, but also the way supply chain providers need to act on the mid and last mile. The ideas of having mobility hubs as well as fulfillment centers is already a reality. And today we already see that carriers utilize bikes, robots, short-range electric vehicles as last mile options. And in the mid-mile, we see rail and ships becoming more dominant. Now, Deloitte predicts that in the new age, we actually anything or anyone that that is mobile will become potential to be a delivery courier to get goods, foods, people from point A to point B, and they can do it safely, reliably, and on time. Now, I talked a lot so far, and before you get lost in thought or make you depressed a little bit with some of the statements that I made, let's just summarize what I've talked so far. And here we have a situation where things are even more digital like never before. There is a shortage of drivers in general, not just the quality drivers. There is businesses that need to continue to struggle with the problem of congestion, as well as trying to reduce their carbon footprint. And they will need to adapt to all the time changing infrastructure in urban areas, as well as everything that's happening in between. Well, I have a question to you. Will you, as a transportation company, wait until the truck manufacturer will produce EV trucks? Will you see city governments wait for R&Ds to come up with more sustainable and energy options? Will you, as a supply chain optimization software company, wait for transportation companies to ask you use hybrid routing parameters that includes EV or hybrid use? I'm a great believer that destiny is not a matter of chance, but it's a matter of choice. And the things need to be created and not waited for. Now, if you're a fleet management company and you seriously consider switching half of your company to EV, you will go to your logistics software provider or telematics provider and ask them what can they do in order to help you. And for example, if you want to optimize your routes with both EV ranges in place as well as normal fuel, right? Because we're not going to change quickly. And the supplier might scratch their head and realize that they need to get that data somewhere. And because it's location dependent, he will start searching around. And there are not so many location tech providers nowadays. Well, he might decide and look around, or he will just ignore that request and maybe he will be out of the game even. So what I'm trying to say is that it's crucial to understand that you're not alone in this situation. And we all are in the same boat. And we don't have to dramatically or radically change things now. We can just do it step by step and do a lot of things in parallel, as well as really look forward to this top-notch technologies developments that and policymakers are doing at the same time. So for me, the path to success is quite clear. We all need to work together. So we all know TomTom one way or another from for their navigation devices, but today we actually step by step we started to discover different ways to serve B2B customers. And with 20 years of map making, we actually know where our location technology data and services fit best and to which audience. And what we embodied to learn from customers are these domains, which is fleet and logistics, on-demand, last mile deliveries, as well as food deliveries and ride hailing. And we learned from them that there are certain characteristics that are very important to them. So first of all, the map and traffic data needs to be intelligent. One of the most crucial things for industries that I just mentioned is calculating ETAs. Those calculations are typically complex and don't fit into the story one size fits all. Apart from use cases and business nuances, this calculation entail many things, for example, distance and time of traveling. And it will have, it needs to take into account different types of data. And let me show you what I mean. So if I look at this traffic ETA horizon, you can see how each type of traffic data or traffic component fit into the timeline of the ETA. You can see that the shorter travel distances on the left of this graph have a lot more sources of traffic, which ultimately impacts the trip. For example, it is mostly related to urban logistics because that's where the congestion is most likely to happen. Now, if we talk more about long distances, here we see that real-time traffic plays a less significant role, is still important, but then here we see planned as well as historic traffic data becoming even more significant and plays a more significant role. And even if you have enough data, you can even turn your operations not just from being reactive, but more proactive with some predictive traffic. But in order to reach the state where you're actually able to be proactive and predictive, we're all in a situation here where we can predict even the future. We need to have a lot of data. And thanks to Facebook, concern for privacy is exploding, and we don't see it coming down anytime soon. As a global map-making company, we have a great responsibility to ensure that whatever we do is privacy respected. And luckily, this was in our DNA even before the whole privacy hype has started. And what you see here is actually a heat map of Germany in May 2021. And we get this prop data anonymously from over 600 million GPS devices globally. And try to imagine that number for a second. I personally cannot comprehend how many data we have to get. But apart from being intelligent and having collected it in a private matter, it's just half of the deal. The way you get location data needs to be flexible. And again, for the same reason that we can't just fit everybody. And what we see is that the transport is getting more intelligent, IoTs, fields in transportation and logistics growing tremendously, but some supply chain systems, especially in ERP, still run things on premises and vehicles not always are able to get cellular connection. So that's why we see importance to our map data and traffic data, both as APIs, SDKs, as well as data in a data format. It's also a matter of choice, as well as your business decisions. What we see on the mobility market, a lot of companies invest in their own routing algorithms, but some just don't have resources to do it, so therefore they just would take an API from the shelf. And there are some just companies that decide that time to market and limited resources really require an API. Now, luckily at TomTom, we are able to give both map data and API services, and this way we keep things flexible as well as give full control to you as a company. And so you can see that our routing algorithm, for example, is available as an API on our developer portal, which you can also try already today. But we also offer things separately as separate components, and you can use it for your own routing engine. So if, for example, you want to ensure that your routing doesn't go where the truck's not supposed to go, or if you have hazardous materials that you carry, or you want to ensure that it avoids the emission zones. So this way you can definitely use different data sets from us. Now, apart from having flexibility, we also need to ensure that data exists in a fresh way, but not only that it's up to date, but it also goes through the quality control. And lastly, this data needs to be adaptable to create other emerging technologies like ADAS maps that will enable autonomous driving. It needs to be adaptable to different use cases, like driving electric truck is not the same as driving a passenger e-vehicle. Adaptable from perspective that it might be combined with different sources, like open data, so it can all work greatly in sync. And the data needs to be adaptable for commercial use, but also for governments, because they are like nobody else is hungry for things like trip data, so that they can make intelligent decisions about the infrastructure. So just to recap, intelligent, privacy-conscious, flexible, fresh, and adaptable are the foundational pillars when powering your logistics and transportation software platform and powering it for the future to be sustainable. And that's why actually companies like Webfleet and PTV use our maps, traffic, and APIs to monitor, dispatch, and navigate hundreds of roads, as well as optimize 30 million routes per day. And we all focus on what we do best and to accelerate together the adoption of new reality. So we've covered a lot, and there's one thing that I want you to remember from my talk, is that we don't have to wait until all those cool technologies are here. We can start revolutionizing how things and people are moved already today. And in this context, I want to quote Robert Kiyosaki, the future is created by what you do today, but I amended it slightly, and I decided to say that the future is created by what we in Alliance do today. Feel free to connect with me via email or find me on my LinkedIn. I will post it after this talk. And also with my TomTom colleagues by using this QR code. Thanks, and happy to answer your questions.